In my life, few moments have been as life-altering as the day my father, Robert, unexpectedly passed away at the age of 50. A reserved man who never flaunted wealth. My father's will shocked our entire family. During its reading, the lawyer revealed something none of us could have anticipated. My father had amassed an estate worth $50 million. My mother, Susan, my sister, Sandra, and I were left in utter disbelief. As the eldest son, I had always envisioned stepping into my father's modest business, continuing his legacy in the straightforward manner he had led us to expect. Instead, the will disclosed not only his hidden fortune but also an unequal distribution of it. Sandra and I were named primary beneficiaries, with my mother receiving a much smaller share. This surprising division sent shockwaves through our family, sparking confusion, resentment, and suspicion. For my mother, Susan, who was only 45, the revelation was a devastating blow. The man she had spent 2 decades with had hidden an immense fortune from her, and now she was left questioning everything she thought she knew about him. Her grief quickly transformed into anger and disbelief. How could he keep such a secret? Why was she seemingly sidelined in his final decisions? The will not only disrupted her sense of security, but also shook the foundation of trust she had built with my father over their marriage. Sandra, my 25-year-old sister, reacted differently. While my mother was overwhelmed with emotions, Sandra remained composed. Too composed. Her calm demeanor suggested she might have been privy to information about our father's wealth that the rest of us weren't. Her unruffled attitude added a layer of tension to an already strained situation. Meanwhile, I found myself in an impossible position. On one side was my mother, grappling with feelings of betrayal and disbelief. On the other was the reality of my father's decisions and the wealth he had unexpectedly passed down to Sandra and me. I couldn't help but wonder, why had my father kept his fortune a secret? What drove him to distribute it in this way? His choices didn't feel like a blessing but a burden, one that threatened to unravel the family unity I had always valued. As the days turned into weeks, the will became a source of relentless conflict. Our family home, once a sanctuary of warmth and love, transformed into a battlefield of clashing emotions and hidden motives. My mother's grief gave way to action as she decided to challenge the will in court. Sandra's enigmatic behavior fueled doubts, while I struggled to reconcile my loyalty to my mother with my respect for my father's final wishes. Through it all, one question haunted us. What truly defined my father's legacy? The answers remained elusive, but the impact of his choices on our family was undeniable, threatening to dismantle the bond we had once cherished. The inheritance dispute shook the very foundation of our family, forcing us to confront deep-seated issues that had long gone unspoken. It made me question whether the wealth my father, Robert, had left behind would improve our lives or tear us apart. The answer became increasingly bleak as we prepared for a legal battle none of us truly desired. Every step forward seemed to highlight how much we had already lost since the day of that shocking revelation. The days following the disclosure of my father's will were chaotic, filled with raw emotions and an avalanche of legal procedures. My mother, Susan, reeling from grief and disbelief, decided to challenge the will in court. She was determined to uncover the truth behind my father's secret fortune of $50 million and to fight the disproportionate distribution of the estate. To her, it seemed inconceivable that he would bypass her in favor of Sandra and me. With the help of our family advocate, Mr. Jack, she launched a legal battle that soon consumed all of us. Court became the stage for our family struggles, with each session unearthing layers of personal and financial secrets that none of us had expected to confront. My mother's arguments centered on several points. She questioned whether my father had been mentally capable of drafting the will, whether undue influence from unknown parties had swayed his decisions, and whether the document itself could have been fraudulent. These claims were as much about her search for truth as they were about the legalities of the estate. The tension in court sessions was unbearable. I stayed by my mother's side, not entirely convinced of her suspicions, but understanding her need for closure and justice. Sandra, however, distanced herself further. She defended our father's right to allocate his wealth as he saw fit, insisting that questioning his motives was both futile and disrespectful. The strain on our family only deepened as the case progressed. Reporters caught wind of the story, turning our personal ordeal into a public spectacle. They dug into my father's past, uncovering silent partnerships, discreet investments, and hidden dealings that painted a picture of a man far different from the one we thought we knew. The media frenzy magnified the pressure on us, turning our grief into tabloid fodder and amplifying every family conflict for the world to see. Amid this chaos, Mr. Jack remained a stabilizing force. His calm professionalism and expertise in family law were invaluable as he navigated the intricate legal web surrounding the case. Despite his attempts to mediate and find common ground, the emotional weight of each revelation often drowned out any progress toward resolution. For me, the legal proceedings brought a painful realization. Every court appearance and disclosure about my father's secret life challenged my perception of him. The man I thought I knew, the quiet, reserved businessman, had lived a life of complexity and secrecy that none of us could have imagined. The inheritance, cloaked in mystery, symbolized not only financial gain but also the hidden fractures within our family. Through it all, my mother's determination never wavered. For her, this was more than a fight for her rightful share. It was a quest to understand the man she had loved and the choices he had made. This legal battle, though tangled in technicalities, was ultimately a journey for recognition and truth, a search for identity within the shadow of a legacy that had transformed from a source of pride to an enigma. The ongoing legal battle over my father's will revealed not only the hidden depths of his financial dealings, but also began to fracture the dynamics within our family. As the proceedings dragged on, my sister Sandra's changing perspective became a focal point of tension. Initially as shocked as the rest of us by the revelations, Sandra gradually shifted her stance, aligning more closely with the terms outlined in the will. Sandra, at 25, started expressing a belief that our father, Robert, had valid reasons for distributing his wealth as he did. She speculated that his decisions were purposeful, perhaps even intended to teach us lessons we had yet to understand. This perspective placed her at odds with our mother, Susan, who viewed the will as a betrayal and sought to challenge its authenticity, driven by the pain of being excluded from the substantial inheritance. The rift between Sandra and our mother deepened quickly. Family gatherings that were once sources of warmth and connection turned into battlegrounds. Discussions about the will often escalated into arguments over loyalty, respect, and the proper way to grieve. Sandra accused Susan of disrespecting our father's autonomy and questioned her motivations for contesting the will. In turn, Susan felt hurt and abandoned by Sandra's apparent lack of empathy and refusal to acknowledge the emotional havoc the inheritance had unleashed. This growing divide between Sandra and Susan rippled throughout our family. What had once been a close bond between mother and daughter turned cold and distant, their interactions reduced to formalities. Watching their relationship deteriorate was deeply painful. I found myself caught in the middle, trying to mediate between the two, while wrestling with my own complicated feelings about my father's decisions and their implications. Sandra's shift in attitude also strained our sibling relationship. We had always been a team, united against life's challenges. Yet, the inheritance dispute revealed sharp differences in our views on wealth, responsibility, and family loyalty. Sandra's determination to uphold what she believed to be our father's intentions created an unexpected distance between us. It was as though the very thing that should have brought us together, the legacy of our father, was instead pulling us apart. Her arguments forced me to reevaluate my own position. I started to wonder if perhaps there was a deeper purpose behind our father's actions. Had he designed the will to provoke growth or change in us? This introspection was isolating, as it placed me at odds with both my mother's grief-fueled pursuit of justice and Sandra's pragmatic acceptance of our father's wishes. As the months wore on, The dispute over the inheritance consumed our lives. It overshadowed everything else, leaving no room for healing or rebuilding. The legal battle, amplified by internal conflicts, attracted the attention of not only family and friends, but also the wider community. The media's scrutiny added another layer of stress, making our private struggles a public spectacle. Through it all, our family's unity unraveled further. The wealth my father had left behind, meant to provide for us, instead became the wedge that drove us apart, a stark reminder of how fragile relationships can become when tested by loss, secrets, and differing interpretations of legacy. In this intense and emotionally charged period, I often found myself contemplating the true meanings of inheritance and legacy. The legal conflict forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about our family, our values, and even our own identities. As Sandra continued to distance herself emotionally from our mother, it became evident that the resolution of this dispute, whatever it might be, would permanently redefine our family dynamics. The scars from this ordeal seemed destined to linger, influencing our relationships and personal journeys far into the future. As the inheritance battle unfolded, Mr. Jack, our family advocate, emerged as a central figure. His role went far beyond typical legal representation. He became deeply enmeshed in both the emotional and procedural intricacies of our family's crisis. With his wealth of experience and composed demeanor, Mr. Jack was instrumental in guiding us through the storm, aiming to preserve what remained of our familial ties while navigating the legal complexities of the case. From the very beginning, Mr. Jack recognized the delicate nature of the situation. He understood that the dispute wasn't solely about the $50 million estate. It was also a grieving family struggling to reconcile the loss of our father with the shocking revelations of his will. His approach was thoughtful and methodical, combining empathy with a firm grasp of legal strategy to mediate between the conflicting interests within our family. One of Mr. Jack's first steps was establishing open communication among family members. He encouraged transparency and initiated mediation sessions that involved not only our immediate family, but also extended relatives who had been indirectly affected by the dispute. These sessions provided a controlled environment for airing grievances and allowed everyone to express their emotions and perspectives without the rigidity of formal courtroom proceedings. During these meetings, Mr. Jack paid close attention to each person's concerns. He gave my mother, Susan, the space to voice her feelings of betrayal and marginalization while also engaging with Sandra and me to understand our positions. His ability to navigate these sensitive conversations with tact and insight helped prevent the conflict from escalating further. On the legal front, Mr. Jack outlined potential outcomes of the will contestation. He presented scenarios ranging from the complete overturning of the will to its full execution as it was written, explaining the legal ramifications and expected timelines for each. By offering a clear picture of what lay ahead, he helped us prepare for the potential financial and emotional costs of the dispute, setting realistic expectations for everyone involved. A particularly significant aspect of Mr. Jack's strategy was his introduction of independent experts. He enlisted forensic accountants to examine my father's financial history, uncovering the sources of his wealth and the decisions behind its allocation. He also consulted estate planning specialists to shed light on the possible motivations behind my father's choices. This multidimensional approach not only deepened our understanding of the case, but also provided a more nuanced view of my father's intentions, which helped diffuse some of the anger and resentment within the family. Mr. Jack's efforts offered us not just legal guidance, but also a sense of stability amidst the chaos. His meticulous work and measured approach became a cornerstone in our journey, as we struggled to find a resolution that could honor both our father's legacy and the fractured bonds within our family. While the road ahead remained uncertain, his expertise and empathy gave us hope for a resolution that could, at the very least, prevent further damage. Throughout the ordeal, Mr. Jack remained a steadying force, his calm demeanor and professional approach offering much-needed reassurance. While his mediation efforts didn't always lead to immediate resolutions, they brought a sense of structure and care to a deeply emotional and complex situation. His presence acted as a buffer against the overwhelming tide of emotions, ensuring that our discussions, however heated, remained respectful and constructive. As time went on, Mr. Jack's role evolved beyond that of a legal advocate. He became a trusted confidant and counselor, someone we could rely on during this tumultuous chapter of our lives. Though the legal battle's outcome remained uncertain, his efforts guaranteed that whatever resolution we reached would uphold the dignity and emotional well-being of everyone involved. Amidst the storm of legal disputes and fractured relationships, my position as the eldest son grew increasingly complicated. My role went beyond navigating the technicalities of inheritance law. I found myself striving to preserve a semblance of unity in a family teetering on the edge of permanent estrangement. On one side, my mother, Susan, was reeling from feelings of betrayal and grief. On the other, my sister Sandra's differing perspective on our father's decisions created an ever-widening chasm between us. Watching our family unravel, I often found myself questioning my father's intentions. Could he have anticipated the turmoil his decisions would cause? Or had he underestimated the emotional fallout, believing financial stability would heal all wounds? These lingering questions haunted me as I worked tirelessly to bridge the ever-deepening divides within our family. The estate, with its staggering value of $50 million, felt less like a blessing and more like a curse. Greed and mistrust began to infiltrate every interaction, replacing the warmth and camaraderie we once shared. Each legal development seemed to sow further discord, as family members took sides in a conflict that felt as personal as it was financial. My attempts at mediation were met with mixed reactions. My mother leaned on me for support, but was wary of any suggestion that seemed to weaken her stance against the will. Sandra, meanwhile, viewed my efforts with skepticism, suspecting that my neutrality signaled a lack of loyalty to our father's final wishes. Balancing these opposing forces was draining, both emotionally and mentally. To find common ground, I organized one-on-one conversations with each family member. I listened without judgment, encouraging open discussions about our feelings toward the inheritance and the man who had left it behind. I hoped these conversations would remind us of the shared love we once felt for our father and for each other. I also sought guidance from Mr. Jack, whose expertise proved invaluable. He offered legal insights and practical advice on how to manage the escalating tensions while preserving our relationships. With his help, I found ways to convey complex legal realities to my family without exacerbating existing wounds. His wisdom reinforced my resolve to find a resolution that would honor my father's legacy while allowing our family to heal. As the conflict unfolded, it became clear that the inheritance was not just about money. It was about our identity as a family and the bonds we once held dear. Though the road ahead was uncertain, I remained committed to seeking a path forward that would allow us to reconcile and move beyond the pain. The relentless media attention surrounding our case only heightened the tension. Eager reporters painted a sensationalized image of a wealthy family embroiled in an inheritance battle, subjecting us to unwelcome public scrutiny. I took it upon myself to shield my mother and sister from intrusive questions and persistent paparazzi, adding yet another layer to my already complicated role as the family's protector. Despite the chaos, I clung to the hope that we could find a resolution that honored my father's intentions while addressing the needs of every family member. This hope was tested with each court appearance and every new legal maneuver, which seemed to push us further apart. Deep down, I understood that the true fight wasn't just over the millions my father left behind. It was over the values and unity that once defined our family. The struggle to uphold those ideals amid the clamor of greed and grief became the heart of my journey as a brother and a son during this harrowing time. Just as we thought the dimensions of our family crisis had been defined by the $50 million inheritance, an unexpected revelation added another twist to the narrative. Further investigation into my father Robert's financial affairs uncovered hidden assets tucked away in a labyrinth of investments and offshore accounts. This discovery shocked us all, forcing us to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about his legacy. These concealed assets came to light thanks to the painstaking work of the forensic accountants hired by Mr. Jack, our trusted advocate. Their findings revealed that the $50 million estate was only the tip of the iceberg. The portfolio was far more extensive, carefully arranged to remain undiscovered. This new information deepened the mystery surrounding my father's life, raising pressing questions about the motivations behind his secrecy and how it aligned with his true intentions. As the eldest son and a mediator in the family, I bore the weight of this revelation. The newfound wealth intensified disputes among extended family members, who saw it as a fresh opportunity to stake their claims. At the same time, it offered a potential avenue for more equitable resolution among the immediate family, provided it was managed wisely. The nature of these additional assets ranged from international real estate and private company shares to substantial stock portfolios. The sheer scale of the discovery necessitated a reevaluation of the legal strategies at play. Mr. Jack suggested that these assets might be used to negotiate a settlement that could satisfy all parties more effectively, potentially defusing the mounting tensions. Though the revelation of hidden wealth complicated our situation, it also provided a glimmer of hope, a chance to mend the fractures within our family. Whether it would succeed in healing old wounds or deepen the rifts that had already formed remained uncertain, but the discovery underscored the complexity of my father's legacy and the enduring impact it would have on our lives. As the inheritance dispute wore on, the possibility of finding a peaceful resolution seemed increasingly unlikely. Negotiations had initially sparked a faint glimmer of hope that compromise might be achievable, sparing our family the turmoil of an extended legal battle. Yet, as each of us dug deeper into our positions, those discussions gradually crumbled, becoming bitter stalemates that only widened the rift among us. At first, the mediation sessions, expertly arranged by Mr. Jack, showed promise. His calm and measured approach encouraged open dialogue about how the estate could be distributed fairly. We examined potential ways to allocate not only the $50 million explicitly detailed in the will, but also the significant hidden assets that had come to light. Mr. Jack's role as both mediator and legal advisor was pivotal, but even his skill couldn't bridge the chasm of mistrust and conflicting emotions dividing our family. Each of us brought distinct perspectives and emotional scars to the table. My mother, Susan, was resolute in her conviction that she had been unjustly excluded from the will. For her, this wasn't just about financial security, it was a matter of dignity, respect, and acknowledgement of her role in my father's life. To her, the secretive nature of my father's wealth and the revelations about additional assets only reinforced her feelings of betrayal. Sandra, on the other hand, continued to defend the will as a reflection of my father's deliberate and thoughtful planning. She argued that his decisions should be honored without question, viewing the discovered assets as further proof of his wisdom and foresight. For her, the idea of altering the terms of the will was tantamount to undermining our father's intentions and legacy. Caught in the middle, I shouldered the heavy burden of attempting to mediate between two irreconcilable positions. I worked tirelessly to propose solutions, formulas for dividing the assets that might address both Susan's need for validation and Sandra's desire to uphold the will. But every attempt at compromise seemed to fail. Susan perceived the compromises as insufficient redress for her perceived slight, while Sandra saw them as betrayals of my father's trust. As emotions flared during each round of discussions, the fragile threads holding our family together began to fray further. Old grievances bubbled to the surface, amplifying the discord. Even when agreements seemed within reach, they would collapse under the weight of mistrust and entrenched differences. Each failed negotiation left us more divided than before, and the idea of resolving the matter without a court ruling became increasingly unrealistic. The process forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth. The fight was no longer just about the money. It had become a battleground for validation, identity, and unresolved pain. The inheritance dispute was pulling us further apart, not just in the courtroom but in our relationships as a family. The hope of salvaging some semblance of unity seemed increasingly out of reach, as every step forward revealed deeper wounds and more obstacles to overcome. The failed negotiations and the subsequent court verdict marked a turning point in our family saga, leaving behind a mix of closure and unresolved tensions. The courtroom became the stage where our family struggles culminated, with each of us facing the culmination of months of emotional strain and legal battles. The weight of the judge's decision was evident as we sat in silence, awaiting the final ruling. It was not merely about money, but the legacy of a man whose choices had reshaped our lives in ways we never imagined. The judge spoke thoughtfully, acknowledging the layers of complexity surrounding the case, the hidden assets, the emotional fractures, and the competing claims for validation and justice. The ruling was a carefully balanced compromise. It sought to address the grievances of all involved while preserving the spirit of my father's intentions. While no one emerged completely satisfied, the decision left space for fairness. Susan's share, my mother, Susan, was awarded a significant portion of the estate, a recognition of her years of partnership with my father and her contributions to his success. The court emphasized her exclusion in the will as an oversight that needed rectifying, both legally and morally. Sandra's conditions, my sister, Sandra, received a substantial share as well, but the court added stipulations to ensure the funds were used responsibly. This decision reflected Sandra's staunch defense of our father's legacy while safeguarding the assets from potential misuse. My role: I was entrusted with overseeing key parts of the estate, including my father's business ventures. The court saw this as a way to honor my father's entrepreneurial vision while ensuring that the wealth continued to benefit the family as a whole. A particularly unexpected but insightful part of the ruling was the mandate for family counseling. The judge recognized the emotional toll the dispute had taken and emphasized the need for us to work through our lingering resentments. This decision underscored the fact that no financial resolution could heal the scars left behind without deliberate effort toward reconciliation. As we exited the courtroom, there was no sense of triumph. Instead, the atmosphere was subdued, marked by a shared exhaustion. Susan, Sandra, and I exchanged weary looks, silently acknowledging the emotional cost of the ordeal. The verdict provided a roadmap for financial fairness, but it left us grappling with a larger question: could our family ever truly recover? The ruling marked the end of the legal battle, but not the beginning of immediate healing. The process of rebuilding trust and understanding would take time, effort, and a willingness to move beyond past grievances. The counseling sessions, though daunting, offered a glimmer of hope that we might someday mend the ties that had been so deeply frayed. For me, the verdict represented more than a resolution of financial disputes. It became a reminder of the resilience required to navigate not only the complexities of wealth and legacy, but also the fragile fabric of family. While the journey ahead promised to be challenging, it also offered the possibility of transformation, a chance to redefine what family could mean in the wake of profound loss and revelation. In the days that followed the court's verdict, our family began taking small yet meaningful steps toward understanding and, perhaps, forgiveness. The court-mandated counseling sessions, initially met with skepticism, became less about the details of the inheritance and more about addressing years of miscommunication and buried grievances. Slowly, we started to see one another not as adversaries in a legal dispute, but as family members who had all suffered a shared loss, the trust and simplicity we once had before the will's shocking revelations. The ruling didn't just redefine our financial lives, it also imposed a new structure on our family dynamics. For better or worse, we now had a framework to work within, forcing us to navigate our relationships with more awareness. It wasn't an instant transformation, but it opened a door for reconciliation, offering a glimmer of hope that, in time, we might rebuild something stronger from the fragments of our shattered bonds. The conclusion of the inheritance battle brought a sense of closure, but also introduced new challenges. Beyond the immediate relief of ending the legal proceedings, it became a time for introspection, a chance to learn from the turmoil and apply those lessons to avoid future conflicts. One of the most valuable takeaways was the critical importance of transparency within the family. My father's decision to keep his financial dealings secret had been a major trigger for the conflict. As we moved forward, we made a collective decision to establish open communication about finances. This extended beyond monetary matters to include more candid conversations about expectations, personal struggles, and concerns. By doing so, we hope to ensure no family member would feel sidelined or blindsided again. Another vital lesson we learned was the importance of thorough estate planning. The complexities that arose during the court proceedings underscored the need for clear, well-documented arrangements that take into account not just legal requirements, but also the emotional and relational dynamics of the family. We realized that these plans shouldn't be made in isolation, but as a collaborative effort. Involving everyone affected by such decisions could prevent misunderstandings and help set the foundation for smoother transitions in the future. The court-mandated family counseling sessions turned out to be more beneficial than any of us expected. They forced us to confront the deeper emotional wounds that had been festering for years, long before the inheritance dispute began. Over time, these sessions became a space for honest conversations, where we could voice our frustrations, fears, and hopes. Through this process, we began to better understand each other's perspectives, creating an environment that allowed for gradual healing. We learned that active listening, truly hearing one another, was as essential to maintaining family harmony as any legal agreement. By addressing the emotional roots of our conflicts, we started to rebuild trust one small step at a time. The experience also transformed our understanding of wealth itself. While financial security can provide opportunities, it became clear to us that it also has the potential to breed division and resentment if not handled with care. This realization prompted us to reevaluate our values and priorities as a family. We decided to place greater emphasis on relationships and shared experiences rather than material gains. We recognized that the legacy we wanted to leave wasn't measured in dollars, but in the strength of our family's unity and the respect we showed one another. In the end, the most meaningful inheritance we could pass on was one of love, understanding, and mutual support. Although the journey had been painful, it offered us a chance to redefine what it meant to be a family, and that, perhaps, was the most valuable outcome of all.